Here we are going on the ranch tour, 68,000 acres, and we're just going to look around. We'll point out some things that are a lot different here than where we're from, particularly the size of the ranch. It's huge. It's not as big as the biggest ranch in Texas, which is the King Ranch, and it's 825,000 acres. So we're going to look around here for a little while. We'll show you things as we go, and stay tuned.
Okay, so this is the namesake of our tour. This is the Branch River, so named by James Venture Mulligan, Mount Mulligan, in 1874. Okay, looks like a bit of a trickle now. In the wet season, this is completely impassable. We have to use a grader with chains to pull our Toyotas across, and we have a video going across here of the Hilux floating sideways, and we were cut off last week for about 6 weeks. And at that time when the Hilux went across the river, that was the lowest it had been in about 4 weeks. At one stage, it was up to about the fork in this gum tree here. The water came, it was one of the biggest wet seasons we've had. The water came all the way up to the back of where you guys have been having breakfast. That's how high it came up. Understated how important this water is to us. Now this will slow to a trickle. Down here we have some deeper water holes, but this will slow down to a very slow trickle and basically become stagnant. Why is it so important? Well, it's a food source. It's a food source, and it has been a food source for the Jungan people of this. So we call the Jungan people, this is their country. And if anyone's seen an Aboriginal map of Australia, we have about 500 different countries within the country now known as Australia. So what's in this water? We have the delicious black bream. This is so these are found, they grow up to about this big. At some of the deeper swimming holes you can catch these quite easily. We have the spotted archerfish. Quite fascinating. I don't know if you guys have seen these ones before. They bring down their prey by shooting out 2 squirts of water. The second squirt of water is slightly faster than the first one, and they tumble insects off the leaves into the water and then jump in. They often work in teams, so one will come in, one will be the spitter, one will be the eater, and then they swap over. So a pretty good good relationship there. We also have an introduced, and my favorite, most delicious, the red claw. These things can grow up to 60 centimeters. They can get massive, and they are absolutely delicious. We also have these guys, which are native to this river. This is a Mitchell River prawn. These guys can also get about this big, and in my opinion, they rival the mud crab for flavor. What else do we get in here? Favorite food of the Jungan people, the freshwater crocodile. Now, we often get asked, do we get saltwater crocodiles in here? The answer is no, thankfully. Now, the reason we don't get saltwater crocodiles, they could easily live in here, and a crocodile without food can bury itself in mud and successfully survive for up to a year in a state of suspended animation, which is pretty scary considering that that's why they've been around since the dinosaur days. These guys, you'll notice something about this guy as opposed to a saltwater crocodile, in that they have long legs. That is what enables these guys, apart from the food source out here. A saltwater crocodile needs a lot of food. These ones with their long legs, they're able to move around a lot easier. So for them, if the water source or the food source dries up, they can move on, and they can travel great distances And like their saltwater cousins, they can also go a long time without food. We see these guys, they're a lot like goldfish in a way. They grow to their surrounds. They will not grow. In Arnhem Land, you'll get them in 3-4 meter lengths. Here, the biggest ones we'll see are a meter long. They're very smart in that they don't outgrow their surrounds. We also get freshwater prawns or shrimps, which are pretty delicious, but you've got to catch a lot to make a meal. One of the reasons I stopped here is we can see these horses here. So these are Brumbies, these are wild horses. They've been trapped by our station manager, Phil. The one on the right hand is a paint. He's going to come over for a look. Hopefully they're very skittish, but they've been locked up for a while now, so they're getting more and more used to our presence. So horses and cattle stations, they don't really mix too well. The reason being that a horse will consume 4 times as much as a cow. We get a lot of these out here, and as beautiful as they are, they're not looked upon favorably by the station manager. He is a horse lover, however, and thankfully he's decided to trap them inside the airfield so we can all appreciate them, and he will soon break these horses in, and you could see that would be a tragic waste of an animal if these horses were culled. So I'm very happy that he's got these, because I just love these. And I believe they're a Spanish Mustang on the right hand. I'm not sure, my equine knowledge is lacking, but I'm going to go for Spanish Mustang. We also get Palominos out here, but they can be incredibly destructive at times. The other reason we're stopped here is that it is a beautiful view of Mount Mulligan, or also known as Narrabulgan. So Narrabulgan is the traditional name, and that's what we like to call it here. So Narrabulgan is 18 kilometers long and 6 kilometers wide. You can fit 8 Ullaroos inside of this. Okay, so it is called a monocline rock as opposed to a monolith. The difference being Uluru, or Ayers Rock as you guys might know it, is a monolith. It's a standalone rock without vegetation. This is a monocline. It was formed by a tectonic rift underneath. Over time, if you think about it like a crack in the pavement, we have coal deposits, we have arenite mudstone, we have conglomerate rock, all being formed over the top. This mountain is full of coal, and there was a coal mine here, and if you go on township tour you'll learn more about that. The coal was formed some 320 million years ago when we had a huge mass extinction event. As some of you might be aware, coal is formed when vegetation rots, and then we have the addition of layers of sedimentary rock, we have pressure, and we have heat, and that equals coal. All of this has occurred over millions of years, and then a huge tectonic event has occurred, lifted this mountain up, and the arenite mudstone surrounding it has fallen off over time, of course, not in a day. And this is what we've been left with. So the beautiful Narrabulgan. It's a great view. We're going to stop in a few different places, but another reason I love to stop here is to give you guys a smell of my favorite plant. So this is called a broadleaf melaleuca. Melaleuca has it's a paper bark, and if you crush that up, I think it smells like passion fruit. That would be very successful in a candle. Crunch it up and have a smell.
So the Brumbies actually respect the fence, right?
Sometimes.
And so when they're running in a big herd and they come to a fence, they don't go through it, I guess.
They do sometimes, if there's enough of them together and they're spooked. Sometimes in a muster, we'll get the helicopters, we'll get the quad bikes, we'll get the dogs out. That's when they can be at their most destructive. For the most part, they like to stay away from us. When these ones were first trapped, I couldn't even pull up here. They were a million miles away. You guys like that smell? Beautiful, isn't it? Does anyone smell passion fruit? That's what I get.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, broadleaf melaleuca.
How do you pronounce the Aboriginal name?
So it's called Narrabulgan. Narrabulgan. And out of respect, that's what we like to refer to it as. All right. Cool. Off we go.
Not super dark.
Probably an eastern brown snake.
Is that why you're wearing those leggings?
That's why I'm wearing these, because I spent all day outside.
Smart.
And yeah. So, well, the thing is, of the 10 most deadly snakes in the world, we've got 5 on this property.
Nice.
Only 5 of them.
Only 5.
5 of them, only 5. So the most common ones we get out here are the eastern brown, which is the second most deadly snake in the world. We also get the inland taipan, and then we also get the death adder. So these ones are not to be messed with in any way, shape or form. And so just remember, this is not me sensationalizing anything, but as you're cruising around the property, remember that there are snakes around, and this is not the kind of place to just wander into the bush willy-nilly. And if you are wandering into the bush, what I like to do is make a bit of noise before you go in, or pick up a rock and throw it on in where you're going to go, because snakes are, for the most part, very predictable. They don't want to know you, and for the most part, you don't want to know them. I always like to try and find 1 or 2. My favorite being the pythons, because they are constrictors and they're not dangerous, and they're usually pretty docile. But at the moment, with the weather change, we're not experiencing a lot of snakes out on the road, because they might come out now. We might see some on the way back, but it's been an overcast morning. So I was surprised actually that you saw one / hit one. All right, so termites. Who knows anything about termites? In Australia, we have over 350 different species of termites. Yeah, and they get a really bad rap because everyone thinks that they're going to eat your house. The reality is that there's only 40 that are invasive and destructive. The rest of them are actually fantastic they're like little garbage collectors. So all of this debris that we see when the grasses die, and you can see everything's turning to brown now. This land in a couple of months will look completely different. There will be no grass whatsoever. That is what their home is made of. They make it in a way that it's completely insulated, and so it stays a constant 28 degrees at all times, whether it's in direct sun or not. They are amazing, amazing insects. The queen, most people think that insects' lives are short. The queen can live for up to 50 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, if you come here, you can see the workers. So we have some workers going in and out. These guys, these are pretty disposable. But the queen, she's the most important. Everyone protects the queen. Okay, and up to 50 years that she can live. These termite mounds, some of them have been abandoned, but they can stay there for up to 100 years. Such is the structural integrity of these, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. And everyone thinks they're invasive, but here's a great example of they're growing around this tree. This tree looks pretty healthy to me. They're not destructive. We have arboreal termites here. They're the ones that do take to the trees, but even then, they're not going to destroy their host. And it's important because there's a symbiotic relationship in everything out here that they know it's pointless to destroy the thing that you live on. Humans could learn a lot from termites.
Yeah.
So this is gardenia. So back in the day, if you caught a wallaby, you would season it with this. It tenderizes the meat, and it's beautiful. So this is the gardenia. over here, another tree here is called a Grevillea paralela. And why it's significant to the Jungian people is we're actually just starting to get them. See these little nuts right up the top there?
Uh-huh.
All right, so if you were to cut them open and rub them on yourself, it's caustic acid, right? So what the Jungian people would do is a scarification ritual that allows identification between different mobs, different countries, different tribes. What they would do is take those nuts, rub it on their chest, then they would blister, they would then push ash into the scars, and that's what it would end up looking like.
So basically branding themselves.
Branding themselves. And why this branding was so important is because these told a tale and said, this is where I'm from, this is who my parents are, and this is who I can marry. So part of the reason why Aboriginals are so successful in this land long before Europeans came here is maintaining pure bloodlines. They knew that from looking at this scarification, you're off limits. You're off limits, but you are, and it's all prearranged. They know which families can breed with which families, and that's the way they maintain a pure bloodline. And they've been doing this successfully for 38,000 years. So it's pretty amazing when you think of that. And
nobody rebels.
Well, it's a good point. So they have their society is held together with a very strict and what we often view as brutal custom law. So if you were to mess around with somebody else, the traditional punishment is a spear through the thigh. All right, there's no messing around. But like these scars, a spear through the thigh, and then the scar from it, that's it. In their culture, it's rude to talk about that scar because they have done the punishment. That's it. It's done. You don't bring up that scar ever again. All of these tell a tale. It's about what their totem animal is, where they come from, their acts of bravery and their acts of sin. And they're all recorded. You will see some elders and they're like a map. And so from one Aboriginal clan to another, they can read that information and they know straight away, okay, I know what you've done. And it's another way of respecting the privacy between the different clans. We don't talk about it. We see that scar on your thigh. We know that you've done something wrong, but we don't ask you about it.
Do they do that to the women as well?
To the women, there are various different. Breaking kneecaps was quite common.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's what we view as brutal, but it was also very successful because people didn't rebel because it was so harsh. Punishment was swift and it was harsh. Yeah, so just a little bit about a few plants, and you guys will know now if you ever catch a wallaby, this is the plant to tenderize the meat with.
Okay.
All right.
When you said this grass will be gone, it's going to be gone because it's been grazed, or?
No, it'll be gone because there'll be no water. So this will all die off, and we have different kinds of grass here. So we have some introduced. So this is called varana, and it's from Bolivia in South America. Okay, we have introduced grass. We have varana, we have seca. You guys have probably smelt some mint, but we have a few introduced grasses here. And what the DPI, or the Department of Primary Industries, do here is they'll actually do seed airdrops of native grasses to try and encourage and combat the introduced grasses. Some of these grasses, like the varana, the cows will eat in a pinch, but they will go for the native grasses because, well, they taste better.
So is there cattle in this big pasture now?
So this is a 12,000 acre paddock. So it's quite small for this area. The cattle station of Narrabulgan is 28,000 hectares or 77,000 acres. So it's a very small one in this area. We have Kondaparinga next door, which is almost 250,000. And up in the Northern Territory, we have a property called Ann Plains, which is 5.3 million square kilometers. It's bigger than Israel. But a fun fact about this, and you'll probably be interested, is that we don't have that many cattle on that much land because it's very hard to feed cattle from this. You know how much they eat, and basically half of the year there's nothing here. So they've got to be sustained by feed, and it makes it a very expensive business. So we only run with 2,500, and amazingly, that cattle station that I was talking about that's 5.3 million, they only have 25,000 head for a property that large.
And
so
so
that's kind of amazing.
what time of year do you feed them in the from in the next month or so?
In
Do you
the
start
next month or so, within 2 months, this will all be gone. Okay, and then the feed. At the moment, we're just providing them with lick.
With what?
With lick.
with a lick
Salt lick. So we have
molasses?
we have a dry lick and a wet lick. At the moment, they're on the wet lick, and as we move into the dry, we'll change that. And Phil treats his cows very well, and so he always makes sure that they have enough lick. We'll go past the lick station just up the road here, and yeah.
And then do you feed them hay during that time of year as well?
Yeah, they get hay. Yeah.
So those where they're rolling up round bales down on the trip up here, that's hauled.
That comes
kind
on
of.
up. Yep. So that'll come on up, but we try to avoid that till the last possible moment because it's business and it's about money. So that's why we've got so much land. We like them to roam as far and as wide as possible to keep this all down for us. And only at the last minute, when the conditions of the cows begins to deteriorate, do we bring in the food. All right, let's do our next stop. Right there. So this is what the Jungian people call Murki, and it's the totem of the mountain. It is a malevolent spirit that lives up here. So much so that in 2012, when it was declared a sacred site, so just for your knowledge, you cannot stand on top of this mountain. You cannot go up there unless you're a traditional owner. Okay? The Jungian people have land rights to the entire mountain and 1 kilometer around it. So basically where Mount Mulligan Lodge sits, that's exactly 1 kilometer on the border.
Really?
So we can go into their land, but we can't build anything on it without their permission. We can't graze on it without their permission. We can't do anything on it without their permission.
Do they let you graze it?
No, they do not.
And do they have cattle or anything?
No, so the land that I was talking about that's the borders ours, Condaparinga, that is, as I said, almost 250,000 and there's nothing on it. So at the moment, that land is in dispute between several clans because we have overlapping territories. And so those overlapping territories don't necessarily coincide with the boundaries of the pastoral leases that were divided up by the Europeans back in the day. So it's a tricky and long-running debate, which I don't think will be solved anytime soon. But good on them, they've got 250,000 acres. Because I know you guys are interested in the cattle. So we run American Brahmin here. They have a hump on their back, which is a lot like a camel, and they can access that in lean times, just like a camel. It's a fat store, and you'll see that throughout the dry season, and that'll get slightly smaller and smaller. Okay, we are not a paddock to plate here. We're a breeding station. So we sell off our steers at about 2 to 2.5 years of age. Okay, we get them to about 350 kilos, and as I was talking about earlier, we do not have the resources or the grass to grow them to full size, so we will sell them to other stations which are bigger and have more feed. And then they are sold off at about 600 kilos for about $4.50 per kilo. Okay, so we run with heifers and cows and steers and weaners, and we have some bulls on the property the other day, and if we're lucky we might see it, but please be aware it is a rogue bull and it weighs about 900 kilos and it is very angry because lately all its girlfriends have been taken away. So if we see it, we'll all stay in the vehicles, but hopefully he'll make an appearance. You'll be able to spot him quite easily, and his horns are about this big and he is massive.
Do you sell the heifers off too then?
We do, yeah.
So you sell them for breeding stock to other ranches?
Yeah, to other ranches.
Stations?
Yeah. Stations, ranches. All right, so they actually use the bark for the quinine flavoring. Highly prized back in the sugarcane days. Quinine combats malaria. You can have a little bite of these. They're not overly pleasant, but they're not poisonous either.
All right.
Yeah. You can taste the quinine. I recommend not eating it, just biting into it, and you'll get that sort of numbing agent going
Very
on.
filmy, yeah.
Makes you appreciate water.
Yeah.
The other reason I wanted to stop here, this tree that we have here, this is called an ironbark. Okay? And this one here is about 140 years old. It's also what we call a scar tree. So we estimate about 100 years ago there was a shield cut out of this. Shields were quite normal in this area for battling with neighbouring tribes, and that's exactly what that would have been in the day. They used the bark, called ironbark because it's incredibly strong. Back in the day, when these are young, this can be peeled off by hand, but they're waterproof, and they're also used as tiling for houses. They're incredibly rugged. They are not, however, termite resistant. We have two termite resistant trees out here. Cypress pine and an ironwood. I'll show you an ironwood later on. But yeah, these are magnificent trees, rated in the Jenker scale. I don't know if anyone is a woodworker here, but this is the third densest timber on the face of the earth. And woodworking machinery hates it.
Huh.
I can assure you.
One of the most enjoyable parts of this ranch tour for me was being able to use a machine to tour the ranch that I'm familiar with here at my own place, and that's the Kubota with the diesel engine. Very nice machine, well constructed, heavy duty, can really pull its weight on the ranch, and made for tough terrain. One thing I do like about it is that it's a machine that's not designed to go fast. Top speed's about 26 miles per hour, but it's rugged and it can do most any terrain. You put it in four-wheel drive and it's like a goat. It can climb to the top of a rock. And so really enjoy this machine. Certainly not paid by Kubota to say anything about their equipment, but I would tell you that I'm very high on the Kubota, and I particularly like the diesel engine. It's really done a good job for me. It can pull my trip hopper, my cube feeder that weighs about 3,500 pounds loaded, and this machine pulls it just fine. So that's my plug for today.
All right, guys, jump on out. What cattle do you have?
I've got Black Angus and a breed you've probably never heard of called South Pole.
Southpaw.
South Pole.
Okay.
Look it up. They're a new breed in the States.
Yeah.
You know the singing group Alabama?
Yeah.
Remember them?
Yeah.
Well, the guy on the right, when you're facing the stage, is the bass player.
Yeah.
Teddy Gentry. He developed this breed in the 1990s.
Yeah.
And it's a grass genetic breed that's highly fertile. They are very efficient on grass. They got all the qualities we need in the southern United States,
Yeah.
and they're getting really popular.
All right. This is quite unusual, actually. They're usually not this inquisitive. All right, if everyone would like to jump on out and come on up, we've got an extra participant in our tour today. So this neck fold flap is called a dewlap, and that regulates their temperature. And I would wager that this one is in the wrong paddock because it's all alone. So I'll probably be doing a bit of cleanup for a while. So the reason I like to stop here is it's a good example of the variation of the country that we have here. We've been coming through what we call classic savanna country. Okay, but it's punctuated by woodland areas like this. Okay, now this is the one that I was talking about. So we had iron bark before, and this is iron wood, right? So most of the time it's termite resistant. This one got a disease at some stage, is it a fungus? But you can see that it's quite old and it's still going strong and it's very healthy. These are not actually a eucalypt, and this timber is what we used in the mines here to support the roof and the beams. It's incredibly strong. Okay? Hello. You come say hello? Probably not.
So that group back there were steers.
Yep.
Why? My way of thinking, I would be thinking I would sell them when they were weaned,
Yep.
so that I could get them off the property, and then and either increase the size of my cow herd or make other adjustments.
I think that you probably need to have a chat to our station manager, because I don't want to do him a disservice by talking about things that I'm not sure about. We do sell the steers, but at 2 to 2.5 years of age. But I've actually only been on property for a couple of months, so this is not terrain that I'm overly familiar with, and this is the first cattle station that I've actually ever worked. So another reason that I wanted to stop here is to give a demonstration of something that the Aboriginals knew all along when they were out here living pre-European settlement, and that is that everything is provided by the bush. So fun fact, if a plant or a tree didn't have a use, it didn't have a name. There's no point. Okay? And what you've got to remember, and I like to tell people, when we come out here, we see the bush. When the Aboriginals are out here, they see a hardware store, they see a pharmacy, and they see a supermarket. There is nothing that they wanted for, and that's why they were so successful. And a good example of bush medicine, if you do me the honors, open that one up. So this is called a red ash, also known as the soap tree. All right, if you crush up these leaves and you pour warm water on it, it creates a lather, and that lather can be used not just for cleaning your clothes, but it can be used for, if anyone's got any mozzie bites, I'll give you some of this, you put it on your mozzie bite, it'll go away. If anyone's got any eczema, it'll go away. It's used as in the mummification process. In some of the clans, they would mummify the deceased in a sitting position and clad them entirely in this, and it would preserve them. The berries from this are highly poisonous. What the Jungan people would do is they would create a paste and they would throw it in the water, and it would deoxygenate the water, and the fish would become confused and come to the surface. They'd be there ready with their spear, easy pickings. You know, so they knew how to work this land and work it smartly. And the Aboriginals, I always like to say, they may not have invented the wheel, but they were the first conservationists, because they never took more than they needed. And even a great example of that is that when they would put this berry into the water, they would then take a gum tree and run the leaves through the water, just like we do with the fish tank, to oxygenate the water, because they didn't want those fish to die, because they're going to come back to those fish later. Everything was considered. Someone's not happy about being on their own, I don't think. If you'd like to pour that on there for me. You see we're starting a lather here. So that lather, I've kind of washed it all away there, but that lather will get super soapy. If you get lots of it, what they would do is get huge tubs of it and they would pound it all together. And then you would put that on any cuts, on any scrapes, on any bruises. So I've had a rash on my knee that I went to the doctors, I asked them, they gave me some cortisone cream. It was there for a couple of months. I came out here, Chrissy, who you were speaking to, she told me about this. I put it on for 2 days, gone, never came back. Wow. So this stuff actually works. Now, if we have a look over here, you see this. So this is called a pink bloodwood tree. If you follow it up, it forks to the right. On the right branch, you will see what is a black orchid. Okay? That black orchid, if you were to take the bulbs from that black orchid, it's powerful, powerful medicine. They make it into a paste, and that, you know how I was talking about custom law when you strayed from one clan to another and you got a spear through the thigh? They planned for this because they didn't want someone to be lame. These people needed to hunt. That tree up there with the bulbs from that black orchid, if you make it into a paste and put it on your skin, after a few hours, your skin becomes completely translucent, like jelly. And that spear can be pulled back through without any harm to your skin, straight through. Simone, the last manager here, who was an anthropologist and has lived in Arnhem Land for 25 years and speaks several indigenous languages, she told a story of a guy getting 3 treble hooks caught in his calf. And the Aboriginals on site used this, laid him down, smeared that plant onto his leg, and she said before her eyes it turned from clear, from skin colored, to being able to see through the muscle. Through the muscle, they took, after several hours, and the skin became so soft that they had to splint it so the calf muscle didn't just fall off the leg. They were then able to take that treble hook and just pull it out. They then took some of this red ash, put it over the top, bandaged him up. In 2 days' time, fine. No problem.
That's crazy.
So, who's familiar with green ants? Okay. Those of you who aren't, come on over here. Oh, there's it. So this is what we call the southern cross spider here. So traditionally, there should be some more around. They'll make a cross that's larger than they are inside the web, and that's meant to confuse the birds. There should be some more around here. And basically, it's meant to make them look bigger than what they actually are. So it's pretty ingenious. So this is a green ant nest.
Cool.
All right. So these guys, you can eat them.
No way.
Yeah. So we give it a bit of a tap, they'll get very angry very quickly. You watch. And here they come. All right, so ants are divided into 3 categories. We have biters, we have stingers, and we have squirters. Right, so these ones are squirters. If I put them on me, come on. All right, so you'll see when it starts biting me, it'll bite. Come on, mate.
Oh, he's a peaceful ant.
He's a peaceful ant. They're usually not peaceful, I can tell you. You know about it if you get a nest on you. All right. So, if you put their abdomen on your tongue, tastes like lime. Who wants to try it?
Ooh. Do it, I did it.
It's pretty good.
Okay, I'll try it.
All right, come on.
Do I hold it?
If you want to hold it, you can hold it.
It's not gonna bite me, huh?
It probably will.
So touch.
And just touch it to my tongue?
Yeah, just touch it to your tongue. Leave it on there for a second.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
limey.
Oh, it is slimy.
Yeah.
Do it, Dad. Kind of just...
So you watch this guy. He's going to get annoyed now. So see how he's making an incision on me? And then he's squirting me.
Oh.
So he squirts me with acid. He makes the incision and then he squirts me with the acid.
Does that not hurt?
Huh. I
Like
don't
a
know.
normal
Do you
ant
want to
bite?
find out?
And how long will he do that?
He'll do that until forever, basically.
And just stay there?
Yeah.
And just stay there, just eat?
He'll just stay there biting and biting and biting on me. Now, you watch this guy. So he's doing the same thing. See how he's bending over? And so he's spraying the acid on me after he's made the incision. I've run into these in the past, and if you get several hundred on you, you certainly know about it. But a couple are fine. You want to try it? You've done it.
I've done it.
I'm good. It's okay, I got all I needed.
Kenny, you want one?
I think I've done this before. I think I did it with you.
No, you didn't, because I did it on a tour in Cairns.
Yeah, there's some.
And they're quite funny. We
I've
call it
done
the
the
green
thing,
ant
so
dance
okay.
because green ants are everywhere. So you'll notice like they're all over this tree. And the funny thing about green ants is once you start to see one, there's thousands. And they are everywhere. And so we call it the green ant dance because everyone's all of a sudden realizing they've got a load of green ants on them. Yeah. So that's just a little example of, so what the Aboriginals would do with these is, so that, there's a reason it tastes acidic. It's super high in vitamin C. So if they had a sore throat, what they would do is get a whole nest like this and put it in water, boil it up, sieve it, and make it and drink it like a tea.
No way.
And that would cure sore throats, colds, you know, a huge range of different things. Yeah. So everything that they wanted for is out here.
So I wanted to give a shout out to Dave, who gave us the tour of the cattle station that you've just seen. And he did a really good job. He's only been working there, I believe, just a few months, so he had a lot of things to learn. And he articulated that well and really presented himself and the cattle station well. So Dave, thank you for doing that for us. And then I wanted to just spend a second talking about the cattle station. Again, about 70,000 acres, plus or minus. And the interesting thing is that the owner, or what I thought was the owner of the ranch, in fact leases it from the Australian government. It is government owned, and when they purchase the lease, they lease it for 20 years, is what my understanding was, and they have to be improving the ranch as they go. And then there's a period where the government officials inspect the ranch and they judge whether or not the leaseholder has continued to make improvements to try to take care of the ecology of the ranch and not overgraze it, take care of the wildlife, all those things that we all as landowners value. And then they renew the lease, assuming all those conditions are met. Again, I don't know all the conditions for sure, but along those lines. And so the lease needs to be profitable, obviously, for the leaseholder. And this particular gentleman built the Mount Mulligan Lodge, and basically it's a resort of sorts. Very nice accommodations. We had a chef that provided all 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for us. Very good cooking, very good food. The accommodations as far as the sleeping quarters were excellent. So we really had a good time. We enjoyed the scenery, we enjoyed the people. The station manager, Phil, is a gentleman that was raised on the ranch, and his parents were on this ranch apparently. And he's been there 70 years and is still has been running the ranch for many years, so he's still in play. Apparently he is directly involved and leads the cattle muster when that occurs. And when they muster the cattle, or round them up as we would say in the States, they do it on horseback. They usually have about 5 cowboys, they have dogs, they have quads, but most of the work is done by helicopter. So that is something that I would love to have been there to see. Didn't happen on this trip, but maybe one in the future. So if you ever get a chance to go to Mount Mulligan, I would highly recommend it. There's other tours that happened on the ranch property. One of them was the town where they had a huge coal mine that was shut down after a cave-in or an explosion that killed, I think, about 76 men. So there's Mount Mulligan. We enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for riding along with me, and stay in the saddle.